Greetings, Patrick here, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday. It is a chilly fall day here in Michigan, and it is dark already. So almost time for us to change our clocks. Uh, so tonight is very special to us. Um, we have got Ron Bonk, who owns and operates SRS Cinema. If you are Oh, what the hell? It looks like my it looks like my screen did not go forward. Hmm. Let me see what happened there. That's interesting. Uh, that's really interesting. Okay, let me see if I can fix that. Because we definitely need to go ahead and show my mug here. Well, I tell you, StreamYard, they're just having all sorts of problems now. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this, I think. I'm gonna have to take that out. That is really that's unfortunate. So I'm gonna put that overlay in the background so people could dig it, but I guess it's not happening. All right, well that's unfortunate. Anyway, if you saw the logo there, that is the SRS logo, and it should not have overlapped my mug here. Oh well, that sort of sucks. Yeah. Good thing nobody else is here to see that. So our guest tonight is Ron Bonk. Always, like I said, he's the owner operator of SRS Cinema, um, and wow, so much fun to be able to talk with him. I've been trying to get him to come on the show for quite a while, and I have to give shout outs to the people who actually made it happen for us, and that is Peter Castro and Thomas from Thomas and for the guys from Anchor Bay, Thomas and Brian Katz, who also came on and hung out with us. And so it's been really cool to be able to get some of these film companies and distributors to come onto the show and talk about their companies. And more importantly, talk about them with us, the people who love physical media. All right. Hey, greetings. Glad you guys are all here. I see a lot of new faces here. Hey, Anthony, how are you? Uh, Thank you for coming in, Skullface astronaut. Welcome in, Joyfield Janae. I hope you like the show. It's different, that's for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, shout out to Peter and Thomas from Anchor Bay and Peter Castro uh, uh, from Bayview, our good friend Raymond from Cytophobia, uh, all coming onto the show now. When I first started this about a year and a half ago, a couple years ago, I couldn't get anybody to come on. Um, but I think they realized, like I mentioned before, I think what they realize is the power of press. There are less companies out there now doing what Ron and the boys are doing. The rest of the crews are doing. Got to mention Joe Lujan, who runs he runs his studio. There's uh, uh, Steve Rosinski and his wife uh, who run their company. Um, so to get these folks to come on here and talk about what it takes to get films out in today's marketplace, it's helpful, for a film collector, a cinephile. Um, Glad they're able to continue to put forward movies, because a lot of places now, especially for independents, where a lot of these guys work for, or they're independent, they're considered independent. They It's hard for them to get product out. It's hard for them to, more and more filmmakers, even independent filmmakers, are now they can't afford to put out a physical copy of their movie. They're just getting me put in the stream. if you're an independent filmmaker and you don't get physical copies out, I don't know. I really fear for the independent filmmaker. I really fear for it because they don't have the resources out there to make this happen on just streaming. You got to have a physical copy to sell, so people get excited about it, and you got to have people like Ron Bonk there to help you get it out, because otherwise it's gonna be like the old days. It's gonna be like the old record days where people used to sell their stuff out of the backseat of their car. That's where it's coming to. That's where it's coming to. Hey, Mike, how are you? How are you? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. So yeah, I can't wait to talk to Ron. And I pushed this up here because this is from this is Graveyard Shark. We're gonna be talking to the director of this movie soon. But this is a movie right here that is put out by SRS. SRS is helping distribute this. Now, on the back of it, it has all of their information on the back of it. But in order to get this out widespread, they need a distributing company. Hence, walks in Ron Bonk and SRS. They come in there, they talk, say, "What can we do to make this thing work?" They do what they need to do. And if you go to the SRS, if you go to the website, you'll see the movie staring right back at you. And it helps the filmmaker. It helps the filmmaker. So so definitely, and the thing interesting too about SRS too is they put out a lot of fun movies. I mean, they do. They really do. I mean, Graveyard Shark, of course, the famous or infamous House Shark. But I sort of noticed a little trend here, and we're definitely going to talk to Ron about this. But it just seems like a little bit more weightier fare is coming from SRS now. They put out kaiju movies now. They're, in fact, I dare say, they're probably the only American distributor that is doing that. I mean, as far as other than, of course, all the old monster movies that are out on Criterion, out on Arrow, but I'm talking about new kaiju movie, new creature features. Um, and I think that they're among one. I think they really are. I think they're the last. They're the last to do it. I don't know anybody else that is actually doing this, um, and they're doing it well. Ron and his company are doing it well. When I was looking through the catalog, the one thing I noticed was it was only 14 pages, and it was like 3 rows of three. Now I know SRS has done a hell of a lot more than that, as far as releases go. And then it hit me that the reason why they only have the 14 there, they're all sold out. Now, Ron and SRS doesn't necessarily run out there and print out 10,000 copies of every movie they distribute. No, some come in small batches. And we're going to talk about how they do this because I find it fascinating. I just like to know how it works because a lot of films will come out there and they will get a small batch release. They will make a 25, 50 movie release. Now, I know you guys are sitting there going like, "Well, who the hell's gonna buy only 50 copies?" Yes, and think about it. You go ahead and release a 50 movie batch. Someone like myself, someone like Steven, someone like Mike, someone like Anthony, somebody like Astronaut up there. We talk about it on our channel, or we write about it on our blog, or we write about it for our review. All of a sudden it's like SRS is releasing a limited number of Graveyard Shark. It's only going to be limited to the 50. Now you know how that is. Speaking of sharks, that's blood in the water to collectors. Blood in the water. When you tell somebody like there's only going to be 50 of these out there, they will jump over cars to get it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, only, what's that saying? That FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, they'll dash over to the SRS site and buy the 50. they'll buy the 50, and a lot of them are signed. Like 50 copies. They're all signed by the movie's director or the cast or whatnot. And that increases sales right away. Now, I'm sure Ron, being the shrewd businessman that he is, yeah, maybe the first 50 go out there and they sell out like that. Now, of course, he's going to have some that, of course, you got to think that, hey, if we could do that for the first 50 and see what happens. And it's also, think about it, it's really clever, is because maybe it doesn't all, maybe they don't, maybe there's no interest in this. Well, I'm sure there is in this. I mean, come on, it's Graveyard Shark. Everybody's going to want this. But think about it. You go ahead and you make 50 copies of a movie out, because a filmmaker has a responsibility too. A filmmaker has a responsibility to try his best to get his movie out in the public's eye, to get out there and push it. Well, so what happens when you release a 50 DVD batch, and maybe only 20 get bought? Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about that with Ron right now, because he is here, and this is going to be a really educational show. So feel free to share us out. I will get to your questions the best I possibly can. So if I'm a little behind, be a little patient with me. All right, here we go. Ta-da! Here, let me make us a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Wow. Honor to meet you, Ron. Been a fan of you and SRS for quite a while. It's yeah, seriously, I've been waiting for this one for a long time, and thank you for coming on and doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I am sure that you've gotten a lot more requests as of late to do these sort of interviews than you used to do, right?
I don't know. It's about the same, I think, as years ago would be like more for the movies I was making at the time. I haven't been as directing as much, at least feature wise, the last few years. So nowadays it's more like I get on these like kaiju podcasts, because of the kaiju releases. So I never had that before, so that's a new element. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're the only American company that's actually releasing new original kaiju movies.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised. I really haven't checked on the competition, but I remember Media Blasters used to have some, way back in the day. And I believe didn't they release it's not a kaiju movie, but the Sharks vs. Ninja movie? Was that them?
Yep. It sounds like it. Yeah. It does. God, I forgot about Master Blaster. They've been around for a while too, but I just don't see their name out anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. A lot of these companies now you're just not seeing before you used to see them all the time when they were magazines, when Fangoria and Rue Morgue, I mean, magazines, you read about it. And now, even now, even when they have gone to websites, and have taken their magazines from print to the web, I noticed a lot of these because they're fighting for viewers, they're fighting for subs too, but they tend to go back to writing about the big movie, the big blockbuster.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You don't really see the love for the independent movies they once had when they were in print.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the movies I've released, they're not brand new movies and they've never been released over here. The perfect example is the Riga Raga series. Like it's pretty, stunning that they never, I mean, as far as I know, they never had a release in North America.
It was Rigo, and there was two other ones, right? There was a trilogy.
Raga, and then there was Oga, the third one. And we just released Shinpai's War of the Ninja Monsters, which is brand new. But Rigo and Raga, Rigo was what, early 2000s or mid 2000s.
I actually found a copy of that when I was out film hunting, and I
Oh,
actually
cool.
I reviewed it.
It was
Um,
DVD or wait, you talking
yeah,
about my release or an old release?
no, your release.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Regal. Yeah, I
yeah.
got Regal, and my friend Casey, who I was hoping for be here today, he's like our biggest kaiju fan. Um, he buys a lot of your stuff. He buys a lot.
Oh,
He,
okay.
he, he reviews it too. Yeah, he's our kaiju guy. I love him too. I grew up
Yep.
watching monster movies. I love them,
Same here.
and I think I do believe you're the only distributor in North America that is actually releasing fresh content, fresh kaiju movies. Um,
Well, I mean, that's definitely surprising. Uh, some of the ones I release are rough. The budgets definitely range. Um, some look amazing, but I just love them so much, and I know, from hearing from the fans, that they want to own these movies, even if they're not, made on a Godzilla level, and so it started off me wanting to have some of these movies because I loved them, but it grew from that because the fans were so responsive to it and they loved it, and they would give me feedback and they would send me suggestions, and or they made their own and they would contact me about them.
um, yeah, yeah, that's the thing. People want these movies. They want to be able
Mhm.
to have access to them, and they can't do that off of streaming.
Yeah.
Now I was using this as an example, and I saw that you're distributing this, and I'll be talking to the filmmaker here in a couple of weeks. But you guys are releasing Graveyard Shark.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't have the distribution rights to that one actually, so I'm just buying copies off Matt. But Matt doesn't live too far away from me. He's actually I'm in Syracuse. He's in Utica, like 45 minutes east, and
So
so
you
I've
went
known him
ahead
for years. So.
and you bought copies and sold or sell them on their website. Now
Yep.
see, now who does that? That's such
Oh,
a
I
kick.
don't.
That's such a kick-ass thing to do. Wow.
That was, I mean, I've done that for a long time, back when I had B Movie Theater, which was b-movie.com. I was acquiring movies and selling other people's movies and buying them wholesale. And then I dropped that for a while. And then I came back to it, after relaunching SRS Cinema as like a shopping cart. I had all the SRS titles, and I was like, oh, let me. It was mainly, I think, Evan Jacobs, who makes some movies for me now too, who would hit me up about listing his titles, and he had the Death Toilet series, and I put them up, and it was, I think he only had the first one at the time, and it sold really well. So, and then it was a mix of other people who saw I was selling Evan stuff, and people I reached out to. Like, I don't remember how we added Matt. I think Matt was finally kind of doing his own distribution, and uh, he had talked to me a few times about distribution. Yeah, I don't remember if I contacted him or what, but Matt was like one of those cases where one of us got in touch with the other and said, "Hey, let's do some business together." And I do have rights to one of his titles, called Killing Time, which is a lot of fun. But I think most of the stuff he does himself.
Yeah, it seems like our friend Skullface Astronaut says great way to help filmmakers reach a new and or different audience. I agree with
That's
that
Joe.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with it 100%. That's a very cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, to do that, yeah, because you have to get it out. I mean,
Mhm.
what does it look like? Sitting where you're sitting, what does it look like when you see streaming services coming on there and smaller distributors are being squeezed out per se? um
Um, I know, with, like, you made a good point about people wanting to own the kaiju movies because these kaiju movies, these indie ones that we're bringing in from Japan or Korea, or these lost ones, they're only going to be out on streaming for a limited time. There's probably, after our agreement expires, there's probably no one out there who's going to pick them up and put them back on streaming. So there's a good chance they will disappear, from the internet completely. And your only way that you'll be able to watch them again is the physical media. That would be like the only way they could exist. I mean, you'd like to believe that, if time goes on and on forever, someone else is going to pick them up after I'm long gone and put them back out on streaming. But the chances are pretty thin with some of these titles. So so anyways, when you were talking about, like, I don't know if the streamers are so much pushing out the little guy. They might be pushing out other little streamers who aren't, doing so well. I don't think the little company really relies on them for revenue. They might start to
No,
feast off it. It might start to become, like, their livelihood. They might start to depend on it. But ultimately, if they're cut off by the streamers, which, Tubi has been getting a lot more picky, for example, and a bunch of the others have always been picky, but Tubi was putting like everything up.
right.
Amazon put most everything up, but they pay such a smaller cut, and it's harder to get visibility on them. But if Tubi cuts them, they're initially hurt by that, but hopefully their fan base, will step up and support them, and so they can at least return to the level that they were at. But it takes work sometimes when if you're a small company and you're almost doing it sort of as a fan, as in a part-time thing, you might do okay for a while and have some success, but eventually that workload, I think, starts to become too much. And then you have to go like, okay, do I keep doing this? We're making, a few pennies a week, or do I go out and return to the regular workforce? And I think that's what happens to a lot of them. Even when they have a good fan base, sometimes the revenue is just not enough.
Yeah, it's not there because they can't, where are they gonna sell it from? You know what, just strictly from the website? I mean,
Yeah.
unless they put resources into that, like
Yeah, you got to stay out there. You got to be promoting it like
no,
all the time. You got to be on social media because people will forget about your site.
you know what? See, this is what I've been talking about. See, this is exactly right. You
Mm.
have to get out there, you have to keep going after it, you have to keep doing press. And that's one
Yeah.
thing I've noticed, like I said, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have gotten to anybody. I asked several distributors if they come on here and talk to me about their
Oh,
company.
wow. Mm,
Oh my God, I got zero.
mhm.
I got nothing. Um, and then it finally cracked.
Okay.
I got Peter Castro from
Oh, I
Bayview.
know Peter.
Yeah. And then as
He's a
soon as
good
he
dude.
came onto the show, and then as soon as that happened, then all of a sudden the door opened wider. And now I'm starting to get them in on a regular basis because you guys all have your different ways of doing business.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and then the one thing you just said too is actually press. You have to get out there. You just can't throw up a website out there. You can't throw
Mhm.
up you can't throw up a Facebook page out there and just sit back and expect all the everything to come in. You got to
Yeah.
work.
It
Not
takes
only you
years.
got to get the
Yeah.
movies, you got to get the movies out, but you got to
Mhm.
tell people all about them. And you guys do a really good job with that.
Oh, thank you. And what you talked about, like it took you a while to open that door. I mean, that's the story of, any business, a story of distribution, as per, our conversation. You can't just launch that distribution company and expect, filmmakers to show up and fans to show up. You got to keep knocking on the door, and then eventually maybe you get the right person through that door and they, post like, hey, I picked up some cool movies from this guy. And then other people who are their friends will then come check out your site, and then it starts to build. So that's basically what you did. You had Peter on, maybe that got some other distributors going, oh well, Peter, he's kind of a big deal, yeah, we'll go on there, and then that opens up more doors for you and gets you more people to talk to.
And I just want to get people out there to know that you've been doing SRS for a while now, for quite a
Mm.
while. You put out some memorable movies. I mean, some of the movies you guys put out are just they're so joyful. I mean, I see the titles
Oh,
come at
thank
me. I'm just
you.
like, I just shake my head because I laugh because it's just like this is awesome. Like
Mhm.
who's gonna go out there and get Zilla foot? Well, obviously
Right.
someone wanted to, right? And so,
Right. Yeah, I
uh,
do release a lot of stuff that I'm sure no one else, unless the filmmaker did themselves, would would put out because they're really rough, but I'll see something in them, or I'll just like the filmmaker, or I don't pick up everything that comes my way, which might be hard to believe with the amount we put out, but if I don't think I can sell it, if I don't think I can sell it enough for a filmmaker who's, say, could tell put a lot of money in it, or their expectations are much too high, but um a lot of filmmakers are just happy to get it out there, and I can look beyond the rough production values to see, to me, it's like the heart that was put into it. Like the Polonia brothers, who get a lot of distribution, Mark nowadays, they're a great example of someone I'll point to. Like when you watch their stuff, especially the early stuff, and it's really rough, you can tell how much they love the genre. Tim Ritter's another, example who, he started out pretty polished. He had some pretty good budgets, but you could really tell how much, they love the movies that they were making and paying tribute to, and that's the thing that I think endears these movies to me, and that's why I'll have so much joy watching them.
That's interesting you brought up the Polonia, and let's talk about that for a little bit, because I'm
Mhm.
very curious about this, because I want to say hi to Brother Max has just walked in, and Tom Baker is here. Says the audience doesn't see the nice trees in a big forest. Too many channels and streaming services. Too many new releases to choose from. Is too much. Well,
There's a
sort
lot.
of. Yeah, but you know what though? The thing is though, here's the thing. Not a lot of people go up there and make that happen. So many new
Mm,
releases. The only new releases you're hearing from are mostly just big studios. You're not hearing from a lot of smaller studios because they're not out there pounding the flesh. And
mm,
even so, that's why I've always said it's like whenever you do a small show like this, now, if you're looking for strictly like massive numbers, no, it's not going to happen. Not on my end. But here's what I have to offer. I offer you a chance to widen that digital footprint out a little bit bigger. So now, when people scroll for your movies, instead of seeing 15 entries, then they might see 16. And that's really all my job is, to get out there and make you just all that much a little bit bigger. But the
mm,
filmmaker itself, that's part of his responsibility too, is to go out there and do the press. And yeah,
mhm.
it may not be the biggest crowd, but man,
Yeah.
you got to get out there and hit it.
It is
And
a joy and effort with the filmmaker. Yeah, 100%. A lot of filmmakers would like to just make their movies and deliver them and have them promoted and distributed. And, a Hollywood studio will have, the budget for it, the crew behind it. But, most of these low budget movies are going to go to a smaller distributor, or they're going to do it themselves. But, the distributor, can do a lot of things right for them. Like, I think I'm pretty good at figuring out the right art for the movie and the right way to present it and tweaking the trailers and stuff like that. But the ultimate best salesperson for each movie, I always said, is the filmmaker themselves,
mhm,
because that's their baby. So no one's going to talk up their baby as much as the parent. So I could
right.
love their child and I could be like, oh, this is a wonderful thing, you should check it out. But their passion is always going to exceed mine. So it is definitely a joint effort. Some filmmakers can just deliver the movie and wash their hands of it, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. But the filmmakers who really get out there and continually spread the word and work on making sure that their friends and family are engaging with their movies. Doesn't necessarily mean buying a copy, but sharing their post, or just letting other people know about them. They will only help the process. They only help the movie get that much more exposure, hopefully sell more, and hopefully make more movies.
Yeah, the part about finishing a movie, and then moving on to the next one.
Mm.
A lot of the actors do that too. They'll finish a shot and they'll finish a movie. They'll say wrap, and that's it. Wrap on Joe Smith.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Joe says, hey, thanks so much, and then, but it's like you got to tell Joe that, hey, stay in touch with Joe. Then when the movie comes out, you got to be able, because I have not had that many directors reach out to me and sit there and say, my movie is done. Could you interview some of the cast members? Can I get,
Yeah.
could you, I don't get nearly enough as I should.
Hmm.
for that to happen. It's like you really want to get out there any chance you can to promote your movie, promote yourself. You got to
Mhm.
do it, no matter what level it is.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah.
let's see. Lady Valerie is in the house. Glad to see you. Chadwick came by and said hello, hello. Josie's music channel is here. Thank you so much for coming in. Share us out if you can. I appreciate that. And of course, our good friend Tom Baker is also here. And glad he's here. About that's a good comment what you made, Tom. Um, and we're going to get into that a little bit too. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned about the Polonia brothers,
Mhm.
and when they first made their films, you go back and you watch them, and they're not that good. They're just not. But I'm thinking when you watch a director, what are you looking for as a distributor? Like when you watch the Polonia movies, and you watch them from probably when they first started all the way up to now. What do you look for in a movie
Mhm.
like, because it seems like they've hit a certain plateau, Ron.
Mhm.
They've hit a certain plateau, and that's all they've hit. It's like I keep repeating the story, but it's true. There was a journalist who used to cover Todd Sheets movies, and one day he wrote an article, and he just cut loose. He says, I've been following Todd Sheets movies for 20 years, and they're all the same. Every single movie is the same. He has not
Mhm.
advanced 1 inch since I first started covering him.
Yeah.
As a distributor, do you look at that sort of thing? Do you look like, okay, I like this
Um,
director, but I want to see what he does I want to see what he does, 2 movies down the line, before you commit
oh,
more
sure.
resources. Uh,
Yeah, I think with, someone like Todd, especially like Mark, Mark has a system because he's working with very low budgets that works for him. And I think that's why he's able to make the movies so quickly and they do follow a certain formula. Mark's formula, though, is very, very Hollywood, like studio-esque, I feel like when I read his scripts, yeah, I can see the bigger idea there, and it's interesting to see the movie delivers because he lacks the budget. Our budgets are only so big. um so Mark has become like, what's the expression, like a journeyman or something like that they'll say about like a director who just knows how to churn out the movies, on time, on budget. You just pitch him an idea and a title and an idea and he'll make it for you. You're not looking to try to win the Academy Award with these things. And so that's why someone like Mark is like super reliable. And I don't think, I don't sense from Mark, like he's always, you'll hear him like in his commentary talking about like, oh, this came out really good. This really came out good. Like he really seems to still enjoy his movies, like watching them as a fan, even though he made them. And, I get a kick out of that. And I don't, sense that he's, like I said, really trying to stretch himself. Maybe if he had like a big budget, someone came along with a mega budget, maybe if something else happened, he's just content to make these movies that are in the model of the types of movies that he likes, and then sit back and enjoy them as a fan and make his next one. But then, and I guess that could be expected of most older filmmakers. Been doing it for a while. Um, the younger filmmakers that I work with, like Bobby Knipp Jr., I feel like he is really trying to stretch himself, and each movie gets better, and he's still hungry, and hopefully the hunger does translate into moving up to another level and getting bigger budgets. Am I looking for that though? Going back to your question, no. I mean, if the filmmaker is delivering, the movie that I've asked him to deliver, and I can tell he's putting like real work, real hard into it, because there could definitely be people out there who will take the money,
mhm.
churn it out on the lowest possible dollar, put into it and deliver it and hope that it's good enough. But if I feel like they really are, I want them to make some money off it, of course, but they're taking their fee, but they're really putting the rest in there, and they're really trying to stretch those dollars, and they really understand the level that we're all working at. That's what I look for, in a filmmaker or in a movie. If it's just purely a cash grab, I'm not saying I won't necessarily pick it up because, ultimately I'm about, making money, but will I want to work with them, say as a filmmaker? Probably not.
Yeah, I was just I have to laugh at that comment because I just think of the I just think of the one director that I'm just thinking, wow, this guy. I mean, I don't know how much. I just don't know how much money I don't know how much money he makes his movies for. I swear it's got to be under at least $50 for every movie he makes, and
Hmm.
they're just god awful. But somehow, some way, he continues to get them out there. Um,
Yeah.
and I name names because I just don't care because I think it's worth talking about.
If you want to.
The director I'm talking about is Dustin Ferguson, of course. Now he
Okay.
is now. Have you ever worked with? I'm sure you probably worked with Dustin a couple of times in the beginning.
Not
So what?
really.
No.
He
Okay.
sent me a documentary that he made, Penny Pinchers, and it didn't sell much, and we didn't do much with it. And he never really sent me his features. Um, I've only seen like one of his movies. It
I
was
think
pretty crazy.
I do think he probably has some common sense there.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I would give him a chance. I'm not going to pass any judgment because I don't know. I don't know Dustin. I know, he has his fans and his haters. The one movie I saw was definitely rough, but it did make me laugh. I did enjoy it. I don't remember the title. All I've seen though lately is, he seems to be moving up the ladder. Like, wasn't he doing some bigger budget stuff that I thought was
Uh,
getting some good reviews, but
yeah. He
maybe
did. You know
maybe
what? You
not.
know what's else? You mentioned he did do a couple of documentaries. One actually caught on Tubi, and I was shocked as hell when I watched it because it was really good.
Oh,
And I'm
good.
going,
Good.
wow. I'm going like this is a decent documentary. About micro budget and filmmaking.
Was it Penny
I'm going,
Ventures?
I don't think it
No.
was that. I think it was
Oh,
something
okay.
on the floor. It was a different. I think it was a different title.
Mhm.
But the movies themselves, though, like he just put one on Tubi when you're talking about Tubi being really choosy, and I'm thinking, well, thank God they haven't gotten to the same level as what Amazon did because they just put out a new Dustin Ferguson movie called Bad CGI Monster, and it's from this year. So
Oh, I didn't know
I'm
he
thinking
made that one. Oh,
I'm going like, oh, okay, well, Tubi's good. Tubi's good. No, Tubi's not gonna shut down anybody. Um, but so it was the same thing. I went to look at it because it's like it's brand new movie. So is it the same movie that he makes all the time, or is it the same Dustin Ferguson movie? And it's the same
is it
thing.
the same? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The bad CGI is interesting because I released Bad CGI Sharks, which the Majama team there made, and I don't know if you know their story, but they were talking with Charles Band, I think, to make that bad CGI Gator movie that came out, or at least, more on that line, and then didn't work out with them. So he made his own. So I'm curious, is that Band who put out the bad CGI monster? I mean, it must be,
No,
right?
no, no. It was
Oh, it's
Ferguson put out
not.
his own. Yeah, he put it out under his own banner.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess they're jumping on that
Oh,
bandwagon. I mean, I
even
told those
so,
guys they should go make more of those themselves,
I know, but what's funny is we actually talked to them once. We did it on another show. We talked to them about that, like because it was a great little movie. I mean, it was
Yeah, yeah.
hilarious.
I love bad CGI sharks. It's
Yeah,
got a
me
lot of
too.
heart to it. It's,
I'm thinking, wow, that's gonna launch them. That's gonna launch
Mhm.
these. But then I think one of them got sick, or one of them had a family member got sick, or something like that, and he just never heard back from. You just never saw him again. I don't think they've. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if they released anything since they've done Bad CGI Shark.
I don't know if they've done a feature. They've talked about it. I remember they were in negotiations on that. One of them does like YouTube videos and stuff like that. But I wasn't aware of anyone being sick in the group. But yeah, I'd love to see them make more movies.
Now, how do you choose to go from being a distributor to a producer? What
I
sparks?
mean, I
What's
started off as a filmmaker. I had made a video on the antique business that sold really well for me. I self-distributed it. Then I made my first feature, and I decided that, I didn't want to risk signing it to anybody. There wasn't a lot of options out there. This is back on the shot on video days, and so I decided to distribute myself. And then other filmmakers saw my ads, like Tim Ritter, and contacted me about releasing their stuff, and sort of built from there. But I mean, I was producing, after I did City of the Vampires, I went out and worked on The Sandman. And then I came back and did Vicious Sweet. And then I produced like Gut Pile, which just came out, on Blu-ray, through through Saturn's Core. And and I produced a few other movies. Most of them I was directing, but I was already, like, back then, getting my dipping my fingers into producing stuff. And I've done it a little bit here and there over the years, but it became more of a thing when like we had done Deadly Playthings with Mark Polonia. Um, when I guess I was always kind of zeroed in on the demand and looking for those movies, but then it kind of hit me like, maybe I just need to make more of these movies myself in order to meet that demand. And then it just sort of ballooned. It's the first few did well, and now we're making at least five or six, if not more, movies a year that we're producing. It does cut down on my availability to make my own stuff, but there is a plan. I'm just waiting for a few things to finish up, and then I'll be back to directing, hopefully a feature every year.
now when you produce, uh, do you have a set? Do you have like are you involved in setting the budget for that, or do
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I set the budget. It could grow depending on how good the Indiegogo does. We, always have an Indiegogo to support all these productions. Um, so I'll give the filmmaker a title and a pitch. Some filmmakers will hit me with a title and a pitch. Like Spanned Exorcist was Brett Kelly's idea. We were throwing Exorcist idea back and forth, and he pitched that one, which I thought was real funny. And we had lined up like three. But most cases, it's I'll come up with a title based on demand. I have like this long list of titles that's constantly evolving and changing. Like a title seems great one year, doesn't work the next year, so it'll move down the list, but I'll always kind of keep it on the list. And I'll look for, I don't know, trends in the world. Like we tried some political, sort of horror movies there. And it's hard not to focus on things like shark movies, and Amityville movies, which, we're doing another one. But I do try to mix it up more and more and try to test the field as opposed to, doing the obvious sort of stuff, in the hopes that, it'll grow the company overall. So it won't be, so we're hitting our fan base, we're hitting what we're selling to, like the Amityville movies,
Absolutely.
upsend the shark movies, but then we're throwing something else in there, like, Gobblefoot or Spanned Exorcist or Night of the Strangers, and hoping, that can, also
Yeah, yeah,
expands like the fan base.
I was gonna say, when I looked through the catalog, I noticed something right away. I noticed something when I was going through it.
Uh,
And I sort of noticed that some of the movies that you were doing seem to be having just a little bit more heft to them than normally, like, where we're doing Amityville, Amityville, Cat Box. Okay. But then I noticed that there seems like to be a little bit more movies that are a little bit more straight horror or straight thriller. They're becoming a little bit more traditional, like,
sure, there's a mix. Like The Final Possession was more of a straightforward
right.
horror movie with, I don't know if there's really any humor, in that one. Um,
Do you think it's because SRS does a lot of these creature features and a lot of these shark movies? Do you think that's the big hook? That's where people reason keep coming to you, not only to buy these movies, but also for you to distribute them. Is that your niche? And if it is, if do you feel if it is your niche, are you happy to stay there, or do you want to go forward a little bit?
Um, I think our niche is just having fun, entertaining movies, despite the low budget. So they can be funny, which, this budget level lends itself, to like humorous horror a lot, comedy horror. But I do like to mix in some serious stuff, so it's not all one dimensional. And the other thing is, I do pick up a lot of movies that like the movies I'm producing, maybe we're producing too many Amityville movies, but I'm picking up a lot of movies that aren't Amityville movies to help mix up, the slate, the catalog. Um, I one thing I've noticed, over the years of being a distributor is, a lot of companies will build themselves off of like the smaller studios and smaller titles. And when they achieve a level of success, sometimes they get bought out, like Disney or Universal or something. Then these indie titles will be forced out of their catalog, and then they just become another streamer, another they just another face in that sort of crowd, that Hollywood or high end indie crowd. And then, a lot of times they go out of business. So, yes, I want to grow the company. We are working on bigger budgets. We have been bringing in some investors. We have like these lower tier investors for some of the campaigns now that is doing pretty well. And I'm talking to some investors on a bigger level, that'll probably be a movie that I make, because I want to make sure the first one's done right, and they're really pleased with it. And then I'll bring some of the other filmmakers I work with up to that level. But at the same time, I will hopefully always be able to keep the distribution in place, so it handles this range. Like, so if some filmmaker comes to me, we've distributed movies from a couple of really young filmmakers in recent years, and they have this movie that they made in the backyard with their friends for $200, if that, maybe $0, someone will say. And and it's just a fun movie, and I want to encourage their filmmaking goals. We'll still have a spot to put them out, even if they're only selling 25 or 50 copies. And then at the same time, we'll have our Academy Award level, where, whatever, our 100,000, 500,000 $1 million production. That'd be the ultimate goal, is to get the movies up, into these higher budgets. But I'll only do it if I think, sincerely, the money could be made. When we get up in those budgets, it's not my money, and I would like these investors be able to make their money back, and
Right.
then make more movies with us. Keep feeding,
Seems
that
to
mill or
be
whatever.
that
So
really seems to be the goal here more and more. I just saw our good friend Michael Menard just walked in. He's a filmmaker from Iowa. Just completed his second film, and
awesome.
it seems like, and Tom Baker mentioned, compared to the old days when director Larry Cohen couldn't release It's Alive for almost 2 years, and
Yeah, that's
eventually
amazing.
was a big horror hit in 1974. Different days. Yeah.
And there's those stories, there's hundreds of those stories about movies that got passed over. I would think
Yeah.
I was reading something about, um, one of the producers might have posted this, and someone shared it for Terrifier, where they're saying the studios passed on it, and then the studios wanted them to sell it right out, and they had certain demands, and he stuck to his guns. And then obviously look at the success, that series is having.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of that sort of story, like Here Today, that you're talking about, that literally just happened.
It's funny too, and they're doing it all the right way too. Like, each movie that comes out, that's one good thing about it too. It's like there's a lot of thought and effort into that Terrifier series.
Mm.
It isn't just like let's just, like, that's what killed the Saw series for me, was they quit worrying about the story and just went for the shock and awe. And that's one thing I'm not seeing with Damien and
Mm.
David. They are truly trying to advance the story. They are world
That was
building
great.
in every
Okay.
movie. That's
Mhm.
so rare to see that, see that dedication. And it's an independent project, project
Yeah.
too. they're going to do what they can do with what they have. They don't want to be beholden to anybody necessarily. Um, I
Right.
want to go back to one director you mentioned, and because it's always been, and I think it's really cool that you're working with him, and I'm really glad you are. Let me ask a couple of questions. Just came through here.
Sure.
Let's see. Our friend Snell says, "How difficult is it to get seen in the crazy market today?" Man, that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely harder. Like we had a little bit of a kind of like a gold rush of sorts with the streamers the last few years, that really jumped up during the pandemic and stayed solid where like, it seemed like just about anything was getting, say, put on Tubi, and Tubi was, and seemed to be getting views and doing really well. And now we've seen those Tubi numbers dip, and we've seen them be pickier. So, but the thing is, like, even if you can't get distribution for your movie, you always have the option of putting it out on Vimeo or on YouTube yourself, or putting it on Facebook, um, and promoting it yourself. So will you, get thousands of eyes on it? Maybe not, but at least somebody will get to see it. Um, and hopefully, that leads to you being able to make more movies, either maybe not financially, but maybe just having, hands, involved in it, like people who, love what you did and want to come out and work on it for free, or want to collaborate, or want to donate resources. So yeah, it can be hard if, to compete, on the high level for eyes, but there's always, options to get viewers.
You mentioned about Tubi's numbers, and I think it's pretty simple to explain that. I just feel it's when Tubi first started, and it was the same thing with Amazon. That Amazon did the same thing. They would take anybody that had if your movie was over 70 minutes long, they were taking it, right? And then they
Right.
started doing short films. Tubi, same thing, right? Here they are. They're putting all these cool ass movies out and everything. But all of a sudden, the studios noticed how well Tubi was doing,
Right.
and they got involved in it. And one of
Right.
the things they started doing was they started putting crap that we weren't watching on TV. Like Hell's Kitchen tonight on Fox, tomorrow on Tubi.
Mm,
No, nobody wants to see Hell's Kitchen on Tubi. No, they
mm,
want to see they want to see independent horror, independent drama. That's not what they don't want to see network crap. And
sure.
and
Yeah.
if you notice too, that Tubi's playing more and more bigger pictures, even from their catalog.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
putting that more and more on there. And it's like people are going like, no, this is not what we came here for. We didn't come here for this. We're already getting that already with what we're paying for streaming. We're
Right.
paying you Paramount, and we're paying you Hulu or whatever. We don't really want to see what we're paying here for free.
Hmm.
If I,
Well,
you
that's
know, if
what I
I,
was talking about with the distributors who get, bought out. They become successful, and they, get bought out by a bigger company, and then they abandon, the companies that they build um, their model on. And Tubi, is pulling back on that stuff. They probably, even if they're putting up like Halloween #1 and it's on every streamer in the world, at Halloween time, they're still going to put it on there and probably get more views for it than they will for the indies. But it's the indies that'll keep them alive when the competition, becomes too much, and when, there's just too much stuff out there. Um, we are in like an amazing time for like there's like I when I go through Tubi, there's so many movies on there that I never heard of, that I'll be, oh, well, check this out. And it does help discover some new stuff, but it is, impossible to watch everything. Um, so it is great that there is all these outlets, and I would like to believe most of these filmmakers or distributors are doing okay. They seem to be, making stuff on a regular basis, and that's great. And hopefully, um, they'll continue to get the support to do that. But I'm always curious if there's going to be a breaking point, which is funny. My girlfriend, who was talking to one of her past students who was out in Hollywood, working with a small studio. She's coming back east here because, and I've heard this elsewhere too, is that the studios are pulling back on their productions, and they're also more interested in the indie studios. So you might see, even though, like I said, there's this glut of indie product out there, you may see over the next few years a higher demand for indie studios from from the Hollywood studios to make stuff for them. And when you see something like Terrifier, and we've had several successful horror movies, play at the theaters this
Yeah.
year, even if it's, a few $100,000, it's still a success story. That and it's not just horror; it is there's some drama and comedy and stuff that's done pretty well. Um, that they're starting to recognize, at least for the short term, that there is an audience for these movies, and it does pay them to put them out into the theaters. And you with
You know, you
everything,
know,
it's
you know,
there's gonna be ebbs and flows. There's gonna be highs and lows. If a Tubi goes out of business because they abandon the indies, there'll be another Tubi eventually. You may just have
right.
to wait a few years, and then how good you are at surviving those droughts, will determine if you continue to be a filmmaker or a distributor.
It's funny because I sat there and I watched. I'm a big ISC film fan, and I love their movies.
No, yeah,
And
yeah.
every time I would get one, I would go and read about it or whatnot. I always saw their box office was just practically zero.
Mhm.
Like this movie made $30,000 or 50. I'm like,
Yeah,
how the hell do they stay in business with that? How in the hell they showed the movie on four theaters, and
yeah,
it's like, I don't get it. And especially when you find out that they're owned by AMC, and you're going like, well, why the hell are you not putting them out? I
they
mean,
may have been doing it just to qualify for the Academy Award. Maybe they were trying to,
what the
like, it was a good.
what you're mentioning, how investors want their money back.
Yeah,
Before, you hear people about wanting to, like, I'm going to go meet investors with about this movie. Now, before, they would just say, okay, let's talk about the movie. Okay, and now you have a chance to get your money back because now you have a place to show it, and
mhm.
there's some theaters out there or whatnot. You have a chance to recoup your money. Now investors
Yeah,
are going like, and this is why the Indiegogos are taking over, because now investors are going like, I would like to invest in that. I might invest a little bit, but not a lot, because how am I
yeah,
going to get my money back? Can you explain how are you planning to get my money back?
right.
Are you going to be able to are you going to be able to beat Disney for screen space at the
Mhm.
mega mall? Hell no, you're
Yeah,
not.
no.
You know,
Yeah,
so I mean, that's why a lot of people that used to invest in films, they're holding back a little because they have no way of recouping. They're not in the
yeah,
business to
sure.
throw money away, and that's the problem, I think, with now. And that's the reason why there's a lot of Indiegogos can work.
Hmm.
I think
They
pretty
have
much,
worked.
yeah. I think as long as they stay on the up and up, as far as just taking care of the viewers, the
Sure,
people
yeah.
that donate, as long as they continue to do that, like I saw some guy put out an Indiegogo, and he put it out there for I think he put his Indiegogo out for like in August, and then he said all perks will be delivered by October 2025.
Mhm.
I'm going like, well, that's a strike right there, because no one's going to sit there and give you money today for something over a year down the line.
Unfortunately, it does take that long. I would hope that if you, yeah, it might be. Well, I mean, some investors I think do expect it to take a couple years. One I talked to, at a higher level, at like I think an 18-month, window where he wanted to see it released. He didn't necessarily need his money back, but it does. It usually takes me a couple years to finish my movie from start to finish. Um, if it does take that long, I think you could help alleviate some of the fears by, sharing constant updates on the production, and maybe that's something that
Yeah,
they
I
commit
noticed
to
that you do
during the
that.
campaign. They say like, look, we'll update you every month. We're not just sitting around. We're going to be making the movie. So even though it's going to take us 2 years before we can deliver the perks, or a year to deliver the perks, we're not screwing you. We're not going to disappear, with your money, and you'll never hear from us again.
Right, right. I noticed that you do that a lot for your Indiegogo campaigns. You do updates all the time.
Sure, yeah, we will update all the movies across the different campaigns, which some people get annoyed by, but that helps us reach, the different, supporters in each campaign. So,
Okay, let me go back up here because I think astronaut had a question. Let's see. Says may not be very many completists, but SRS filling out what they want is great and will build loyalty. Yeah, you deliver what your fan base wants. I mean,
sure, yeah.
SRS known for creature features, Amityville, Squatch.
Mhm.
Of course,
Yeah,
that's what you guys are known for. Now kaiju movies. Really starting to, when mention SRS, the first thing I'm thinking about more and more is, yeah, they're the only ones doing kaiju movies. I love kaiju movies.
that
So
was like
um,
a whole new fan base that we've built over the last 4 or 5 years. There was this sort of set SRS fan base, and it was mainly for like, the shot on video stuff and the retro stuff and gore horror. And then, the kaiju base was, almost, I would say 75 to 90% was all like a new fan base, added on to it. So it definitely is, probably the most interesting genre, to have become a part of, the catalog.
exactly.
Mhm.
Let's see, everybody's coming in. Hi Betty Jean, how are you? Snow mentions she writes good scary stories.
Okay.
Terrifier started as a YouTube video, didn't it? I don't know if it started as
Oh,
a
I don't know.
YouTube video. I
It
think
was a
it's
short and an anthology, yeah, right?
yeah, I remember that. I remember it was a short. Yeah, he appeared like in two or three different anthologies before they went with
Oh,
Terrifier. Let's see. Michael Menard
it's a
says,
great character, so
"Oh
I
yeah,
wouldn't be
oh
surprised
my
if they did some YouTube videos, yeah.
No, I mean it is amazing.
Yeah.
There are some movies that come out of left field. My point with IFC films was they finally got in their head that they're gonna team up with Shutter. So
Mm.
before IFC had a channel on Amazon, IFC, and but it I don't know how, I mean, it must have not did all that, but they started Shutter, so they got
Mhm.
Shutter, and then they added ISC Midnight to it. All of a sudden, people started seeing these movies they hadn't seen before because a lot of the ISC Midnights people are like, "What? What's that?" I can't tell you. I can't tell you how many times I was mentioning an IFC movie and people would be
Yeah.
going, "What?" But now that they now and again, it's like they're owned by AMC, and it's like you're sitting there going like, "Why aren't you distributing those movies? Why aren't you?" I mean, look, all the theaters that you have that one small ass room that's not doing shit. You're right, little
Mhm.
40 theater. Why don't you better put them in there? I mean,
Yeah.
just it's not going to cost you anything. I just like, it's your movie. You could put it in there, and it's finally seeing to connect
Yeah, I
with it.
don't know.
Hey, maybe we should start doing that. And before you know it, the last couple of years, they've had some of the biggest runs of their entire existence. They had Skinner Moranik that did over $15
Mm.
million.
Yeah.
What Evil Works Within, and A Violent Nature, and more coming on the way. I don't understand sometimes when people don't
It
use
could
all their
be.
resources.
I mean, it could be financial. Maybe they, did have a demand for that little theater for some other movie. It could be, maybe just someone in the company wasn't giving it enough attention. I have this new salesperson that I'm working with that he's actually retired from 20th Century Fox, and he'll talk about how, he would focus on, the art titles and try to figure out ways to make them sell.
Oh,
And and he would have to convince like Walmart. He'd take a lot of time to think about it and look at the numbers and then present it to him to convince them, to carry it. And he said for the most part they did do well. With any release, nothing's a guaranteed home run, but this was a guy who gave those titles that attention to to get them out there to a bigger audience. So when you're a company and you have your tougher selling whatever dramas and comedies and that are made with no name talent, they're well-made movies. They're really cool, but really well directed, all that sort of stuff. But they're harder to sell than the stuff that's got a few names attached to it. It might not even be as made as well. So it's easy to follow that money and just let those titles, kind of ride the coattails. But it would take maybe somebody in the company to go like, hey, these could sell as well as these big titles if we give them just a little bit more, TLC.
Let's see. I'm gonna drop. I'm dropping Ron's Instagram page down.
Oh,
If you
thank
guys
you.
all want to go over there and join the SRS Army,
Please.
please do, and drop a comment on tell them that the Cheetah sent you. Hey Frog, how are you? Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Um, let's see. Legend Hunters Films mentions I learned more from Ron and other indie filmmakers than I did in film school. That's a compliment. That's a great
That's
compliment.
a great compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Yeah,
love
we've
that.
been working with him a long time. He's a good dude. That's
Tom
right.
Baker says, just look how Sam Raimi got started, endlessly reshooting stuff, no money. It took forever to get Evil Dead in theaters, and look where he is now. Yep, on top. Yep.
Hmm.
I remember listening to him on the Evil Dead commentary saying how when they released it on New Line, um, they didn't think it was going to work. In fact, even on up to the day of the release, they were thinking about pulling it.
No, I
they're,
believe it. Yeah.
yeah, they were thinking about pulling the movie, and then they went in there and they came back around. They saw the whole line wrapped around the theater, and they were like, "What are you guys all here for? We're here to see the Evil Dead."
Oh, that's awesome.
All of a sudden, yeah, that's let's see. Michael Menard says he believes that we're about to enter another 90s renaissance. Everyone's playing it safe now, similar to the 80s. It's only a matter of time before they wake up. And I think what you said earlier about how I think it's going to happen sooner than later too. I do.
Mhm.
I'm surprised it hasn't really happened already. Um,
The
and
business
using
follows
it,
cycles for sure. Yeah.
well, look at the Bloomhouse model. What do you think about Jason's model? How
I
he
don't know. I mean,
he
oh, go ahead. Finish your saying.
I mean he makes a lot of his movies now. It's almost like to him, it's like I'm going to put out a PG-13 movie. Everybody and their grandfather's going to jump on it, you know.
Mhm.
And but I'm going to do that so I can spend a little bit more money on because he's making money. He's making. I
Yeah.
mean, he's got those PG-13 movies in there. They're I think they're like 12 to $15 million per movie. He's making
Mhm.
it back first weekend, and and then he's in
Yeah.
the gravy after that. Um, they're not that good, but it's PG-13. What can you do, right? I mean,
Right.
you can only go so far PG-13, and it does help fund his R-rated movies, which do much better in terms of story wise, going cast
Sure.
wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's mixing it up nicely. I think it's a great model because you do, in an ideal world, the quality movies will always make money, but the fact is a lot of them get overlooked. They get shoved aside by something flashier. So as a distributor, you have to follow the money, in order to also release the stuff that's maybe a little more dear to your heart, or make the stuff that's more dear to your heart. So there's having it's like, if you're going to retire and you're investing, you don't invest all your money into like one stock and wait for that to, hit the highs. It's gonna go up and down and could crash out, ultimately. So you spread it around, and it's a good model to follow as a filmmaker or a distributor. Is you want to bring in cash flow from as many different sources as possible, so you have a constant stream of money, and you look for options all the time, to keep making money. So small movie, maybe it's only going to sell to the fans. Maybe it's only going to sell 50 units, from the website. Never going to do anything else. Fine. That's I made a few bucks off it. The filmmaker made a few bucks off it. They're usually, very happy at that point, even if it is a low number of sales. And then we have something that, like a shark movie that gets into Walmart or does amazing, on the, one of the streaming services, and that in turn, the profit there helps pay for, the work on the smaller movie.
um, how important is transparency between a distributor and a filmmaker?
Well, I mean, it's super important because filmmakers are always cautious. They're always. It's funny how many filmmakers I'll hear from that will automatically distrust, the distributor because of everything they heard. They may have never dealt with one. And then of course there's some who've dealt with them who've been completely screwed over.
Mhm.
So the filmmaker just wants to be treated with respect. I get a lot of filmmakers who aren't even worried about making money on it. They just want to release and they want to keep making their stuff and they want that exposure and they want to be able to hold copy of their movie in their hands. But
Yeah,
my hope with every one
yeah.
of them, and not every one of them makes money by any means.
And not
There's
everybody
a
gets
lot
a
of
hold on it.
releases that didn't recoup and still haven't recouped, but a lot of them do make money. But my hope is that we can keep making more movies together. And that's why I have so many great relationships with so many filmmakers. I have a bunch of filmmakers making movies for me, and I have a lot of filmmakers that come back to me is because they treat them with respect. They can ask me about stuff anytime. They can get a statement, every 3 months. If I have money sooner than that for them, I'll send it to them, provided the money has come in, uh, uh, and yeah, just being transparent with them along the way and listening to what they have. It's hard because there's a lot of filmmakers, so sometimes you do forget to talk to a filmmaker before like finalizing the artwork or something like that. Um, but no disrespect is meant in that particular case. It's just handling a lot of different stuff. Sometimes something falls through the cracks. But I do love fostering the relationships with the filmmakers. I do like to see them do well. It makes me happy when they're happy and that they're making more movies, and that's the ultimate goal.
Um, you mentioned a filmmaker, and I'm sort of glad you did because, um, he's he's one of those filmmakers that you just know that he's a nice guy. You know he's a nice guy, but man, some of the stuff he makes is just like it makes you laugh, and it's like,
Okay.
oh boy, here he comes again, with another one. And like, it's like, okay, it's definitely a Velveeta, it's a Velveeta movie, right? Two slices of bread and some Velveeta, because it's cheese. And the thing is though, they know it. They have to know
Mm,
it. Um, and I saw one filmmaker, he got really he got broken a little bit by another company.
mm,
And I thought he was going to retire. In fact, he even said we can put out videos said he was going to retire. And then
mm.
I started noticing that he started becoming active again on SRS. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
that
I know who you're talking about. I mean, I don't know if I'll say the name, but
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't, I won't put him. I won't. I've talked
Yeah.
about him in the past, and like I've always sort of like wanted him to come onto the show, but I'm afraid he just, because it's not like I just because I haven't, but I just know there's certain people like he's just not going to get. Though I
Oh,
would love to.
I think he would come onto the show, and
You think so? Well, I
um,
think so. After we're talking about him, I mean,
yeah.
you're having a great time. I mean, he might give me the time of day. He might, he
Yeah.
might give me the time of day.
The thing I love about him is he has so many great ideas, and he had problems with other distributors, that he dealt with. I think it was mainly one that he was mad at, even though he
Yeah,
dealt with a few, and it did make him want to leave the business. And he brought a lot of his titles to me, and we produced a couple movies with him. And he gets paid on a regular basis, and he seems to be, very happy with the job that we're doing here. And yes, I managed to keep him from retiring
yeah.
and still making movies, and hopefully we'll keep making movies together. And he has so many great ideas that it always amazes me that any distributor would risk that relationship. Like when you have someone who's doing well for you, you don't like pocket their money or not pay them or not send them statements or cut them off or anything, all these things that a distributor can do. And I'll generalize that because I don't want to like,
No, no, no.
make it
Okay.
sound like I'm talking about any one specific distributor. But if the filmmaker's doing well for you, like you want to foster that relationship. It does bother me when I have a filmmaker who, had maybe an early work with theirs and it doesn't do well. And then I see them doing a lot of stuff and I would love to work with them again, but we had that one bad movie and they don't want to work with me anymore. So, it
How does that
happens.
work? I mean, a distributor can only do certain things, right? You can only look. I can take your movie. I can sit down, and we can talk about renaming your movie.
Mm.
I can tell you about, we're going to try to push it. We're going to try to push it out into the public. But
Mhm.
what happens? What's that saying about you can shine a turd up all you want, but it's still a turd.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I
it
mean,
happens.
sometimes they're not a turd and they don't sell. It's tough, as much as you think you know the system, and you go out and a lot of times, knowing the system is doing sort of the same thing with every movie, and if it works, why change it? Don't I forget what the phrase is, but um, so if we have a system that works, we're going to try to do that every movie and hope that every movie has the same success. But sometimes out of the blue, a movie just won't have that success, and it's hard to explain when I was a younger distributor, less experienced, I was more susceptible to that happening. Like, we had a lot of movies in the 2000s during the recession that just died. Like the model that was working just stopped working, and it was short notice. When we were getting tons of returns. Like these companies who have been stocking the titles, they suddenly had a bunch of bills to pay, and suddenly their sales, dropped, and they were like, well, let's take all these titles and return them to the distributor. So it's getting like thousands of movies back. All these movies went into the hole. Nothing was making money. Nothing seemed to be selling. Nowadays, if that happens, it still could be very damaging, but I have other things in place that help counter that, so but again, it could just be getting back to the filmmakers, who might be disappointed. It could just be bad timing. Like it's not that the distributor did anything wrong. It could just be that their model that had been working when they released your movie, and they used that same model. Well, that model was cut off for whatever reason. Like I said, could be economic, a pandemic or a depression, or it could be a streamer that or an outlet that they're doing really well with goes out of business, and then suddenly, yes, they weren't necessarily lying to you. The numbers they thought they could do were real, but when I don't know, Kmart was maybe carrying all their titles and Kmart goes bankrupt and suddenly they're not carrying their titles anymore, then they don't they might not have um, another source to pick up that slack.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, look what's happening with Big Lots and now GameStop.
Yeah,
Both of them were very much into
Best
selling
Buy,
people.
another one. Yeah.
Yeah, Best Buy. I personally feel Best Buy. I have a feeling. I'm actually really surprised. I thought by now the Best Buy would probably start relenting a little bit, get a little PR push out of it.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that they got out of physical media. I really was,
They
because
didn't listen to the fans for sure. I'm amazed they're still in business sometimes, but
I am too. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like I can't tell you, and the Target too.
mm,
I'm just like, why you took out you took out a section of a store. It's not like people just walk in there, walk to the movie section and walk out. They walk in and they walk the whole store.
yeah,
You never know what kind of, and they're pushing a cart. They may came in for a movie, but if they get a cart, they're probably going to get some other things too while I'm here, milk,
sure, yeah.
bread, whatever. And then instead of, now you have a lot of people, especially young males with a lot of discretion money.
Mhm.
They're not going inside your store anymore. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to, to me, I've always wondered, like, why don't some of these stores, why don't they ever just like look at a YouTube? It's not just about, it's not about just dogs and cats on here. If you
Mm,
sat down there for a little bit and typed in a few keywords, you would find out that there's tens of thousands of people spending a lot of money. Here they're getting the money that they were given to you, Target
mm,
and Best Buy and Walmart. These are the same people that turn right around and they're giving that same money to you, to Severin, to Spinnaker Syndrome, to Blue Underground. That's where that money's going now. It's not coming to your store at all. They're
mm,
still, I mean, just because you say people are not buying, they're not buying DVDs and Blu-rays anymore. No, that's not the case. They're buying it. They're still
mm.
buying it, but they're
Yeah.
just not buying it from you. They're still
Yeah,
spending the
physical
money.
media is still definitely viable, but they viewed that real estate, is, something is more valuable for something else. But, and maybe initially they do well with that, but I mean, how many retail chains go out of business after, like they'll hit this peak, and then they'll suddenly, like, you'll think they're doing great, and then suddenly they're closing hundreds of stores, or they're completely filing for bankruptcy because and I think they don't quite understand what happened. We were changing everything. We were chasing the money, but they were only chasing like the big dollar stuff, and they were forgetting the smaller dollar stuff that was making their customers happy. Like I said, your customers go through and they're always enjoyed going looking at the latest Blu-ray releases, the latest movie releases, whatever they were. That was always a joy for them, say, to go to the store and look at those. And now they don't have those titles anymore. So yeah, they might still go for a while, but then maybe they start to go somewhere else.
What are some of the big what kind of feedback do you get at SRS? What kind of feedback do you get from cinephiles that are that are looking for your product? Like sometimes on your website, not only on your website, or like maybe they don't have access to the website. Maybe they're still dollars and cents sort of people. Do you get complaints about that? Like, I can't find any of your movies.
I mean, I used to hear back in the day, people would say like, "Hey, we can't find them in this store or that store." I don't really hear it too much anymore. I mean, there are definitely new customers all the time. Um, it could be because they are associated with one of the filmmakers whose movies are releasing, or they could have just discovered us. Like they picked up a copy, like you said, you found a copy at a store. They picked up a copy at a store. They liked the movie. They looked at, oh, who released this? Then they look for the website, and then they become a regular customer. But I can't remember the last time I heard from someone who said like, I can't really find your titles. I guess it's more of like they didn't know the titles existed. If I hear from them, they'll be like, "Oh wow, I didn't know, that these." Like I didn't know about a lot of the underground kaiju movies. When I was younger, I was just knew about Godzilla and Ultraman. And the Godzilla monsters. So to find out about like Rigo and Raga and stuff like that, and be like, oh wow, these are pretty good movies.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I said, so I get people come to the site and be like, I had no idea. Or even when I talk to people, and I tell them what I do, and they, I tell them about some of the titles and stuff, or they'll go look at the website, they're always amazed. Oh, I had no idea anyone was making movies for this low a budget or with these sort of crazy plot lines.
Speaking of kaiju, we're going to talk about this before anything else. Let's talk about. I personally feel, is this not your biggest your acquisition in Hoshi 35?
I mean, it's hard to pick something that's more star-studded. I mean,
Oh hell yeah!
Great Yokai War might be the biggest, in terms of just, budget and, the top names involved in it. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing acquisition. I'm super excited about it. I loved Nezera and Great Buddha Arrival, and I'm just happy. It was a tough one to get, but I'm very excited to be releasing it. And on that note, I can't reveal any other titles, but um, I did just sign another kaiju movie. I don't know if this one's on a lot of people's radar, um, but it's pretty awesome. And there's another one, and then there's a couple related movies that we're working on signing that I think are going to come through. So, and then there's a few other kaiju movies that I have offers in on that I'm just waiting, for the agreements to come back on. So it might be a big year next year for us for kaiju movies. And there's a couple major ones that I haven't even seen yet that I'm hoping I'll have a shot at, like Brush of the Gods.
How did you hear about Hoshi 35? Was this something that you knew about from the very get-go, or I mean, how do you, without going into too much details, of course, but how do you find out about these movies? And do the filmmakers over in Japan, are they starting to basically going like, okay, I got a kaiju movie, I'm going to go to SRS first because even over the big studios, I'm going to go to SRS first because they appreciate and respect the genre, and
Mhm.
they show respect for it. Because I think respect in a lot of ways is much bigger in Japan than it is necessarily just straight box office.
Sure, yeah, yeah. They definitely are very passionate about the movies. Hoshi's a perfect example. The 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 movie being presented right is more important to them than the dollars that they're going to make off of it. Um, so yeah, so it is a mixture. You know, filmmakers who come to me directly because they saw I've released, you know, similar product. That's the story, you know, since day one. There's some that are referred to me. There's some that the fans tell me about. Um, um, uh, you know, they'll say like, "Hey, did you?" You know, they'll share a trailer with me, or they'll say, "Hey, I know so and so. You know, you should reach out to them." So it's like a mixture, and then just being more immersed into the indie kaiju world, you know, on Facebook or Reddit or wherever, and you know, that's where I'll hear about these titles and see the trailers, and it's amazing the amount of stuff that's out there. I mean, there's a lot of shorts, but they're still pretty amazing, and outside of Howl from Beyond the Fog, um, there's a couple other shorts that I did try to get. I forget the titles offhand. Um, but it didn't, you know, the filmmakers ultimately, I couldn't convince them, which was surprising. But there's always, you know, as a story with Space Monster Wing Magui that, you know, even if they say no today, to me it's never quite a closed door. Like it's always, there's always an option to revisit it and pursue it and approach them again in the future, keep trying to chat with them and hope eventually that that they'll trust, you know, in SRS to put their title out.
Yeah. And another quick thing I wanted to mention, and I know I'm watching my clock here. Um, if you guys have any questions, for sure, feel free to drop a few. We'll get to a few of them here before we let Ron go. The other thing I noticed too before you got here, I was commenting about this. I noticed that that you do small batch releases, which
Yeah.
I find fascinating.
Mm.
You'll get like a small batch of 25 or a small batch of 50, and you'll come up there saying this is what we got. We got a small batch of Godzilla versus Bambi. We got 25 and they're autographed. And then we
Yeah.
got, we only got 50 here. This is it. Um and then how does that work? Does that generate, I mean, is that the initial offer just to see how, like, almost like a test run to see how a movie will do.
Yeah,
Let's
we
say,
don't do too much below 100 nowadays, but sometimes even 100 can be a struggle to sell. But if the title sells real well, you know, like in that pre-sale period, then we'll consider, you know, doing the full pressed disc of it. But so sometimes it is a test because you know there'll be titles. There's rarely been a title where I thought it was going to sell beyond that limited edition so fast that we needed to mass produce it. There was a couple titles that I wish I had. I remember like Garden Tool Massacre.
oh
You know, we had
yeah,
a very limited run and it sold so fast. I extended the run and then I extended the run a little bit more. And then it did hit like this point where it dropped off. So maybe it was wise to have not because it's, you know,
did you
so
ever see
slow.
that
And
filmmakers? Did you ever see that filmmakers follow up film, House on
well, I
Cuckoo Lane?
released it. You talking about House
House
Cuckoo
on Cuckoo.
Lane?
Yeah,
Yeah.
have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I mean, we released it. It did well, and limited Blu-ray as well. Sold pretty quick. It was riding Garden Tool Massacre's coattails a little bit, like you know,
Such
it's
a
wave.
That's a
Um,
criminal. Let's ask you this. As you're sitting here, what's been the 5 movies that have been criminally underrated for you that have come
oh,
across your desk? Like if you were going to say, hey, you got to
I have
check
to
out these
comb through a
five
lot
movies.
of titles. Let me think. Because this could go way back. I think of one Slaughter Day, which did actually come out under Visual Vengeance. You know, like that was one that I always thought was like amazing, so much fun, and I think we sold like 5 copies on VHS back in the day. I also like Planalunio a lot, which was a filmmaker from Argentina? I forget, but you know, it was this werewolf movie, and it was basically like a guy with a rug, like the werewolf looked like a big teddy bear and I didn't see him really well, but it was really so well shot. It had like such great atmosphere. Um, it didn't sell a lot. I'm trying to think of the titles that out and out bombed. Uh,
Does it really, like, when you as you're thinking about those movies, does it is it exciting for you to discover young filmmakers, like they said, like
oh,
they don't
sure.
know,
Yeah, all
nobody
the
knows
time.
who they
Mhm.
are, and they send in their film, and all of a sudden you look at it and go like, I'm gonna run with this, because, or I'm gonna keep track of this young talent because they got
Yeah.
something to say. Is
Yeah,
that
like the gang who wrote, the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. I released their first movie. He went by Worm Miller back in the day, and Patrick Casey, and I released Hey Stop Stabbing Me, and the movie was so much fun. And that criminally undersold for me, and it could be, we just put the wrong artwork on it. I remember like the people who worked on the movie were like, "That's we don't like that artwork." They definitely weren't happy with it. They weren't mad at me, but they wish I had presented it a different way.
Yeah,
And I tried to present it to make it appeal and at a more of a mainstream level, because I believe that if more people saw it, they would love that movie. And it didn't work. I remember another one called 42K. I don't know. I think it was called 42K. Or no, Y2K, 42K. It was this funny horror movie, these goofy guys, and we used to watch all the time in the office. And I even mass printed sleeves for it. And um, uh, that one, just no matter what I did, one of the key things that I've learned over the years, artwork is such key. And the
oh
artwork we did for, we mass printed it and thought we did pretty good artwork for it, but um, it wasn't the level it needed to be. And one of the nice things about the internet nowadays is, the world is so much smaller that I can find like great artists to work with, both for doing illustrated art and real artwork. But back then, like working out of Syracuse, there was, I tried working with a couple local companies and got overcharged, and the artwork wasn't very good. One guy who later worked on some of my movies laughed. He said, "We way overcharged you on those covers we did for you." And um, uh, I just wasn't finding it, but nowadays I can find the people who can package it right. And
it just amazes me that when people do that shit. It's like you get a chance to get a client in here that's going to give you a lot of business for a long time, and then
yeah,
you're so freaking so short and so narrow minded, you can only see beyond your nose, and you decide to rip them off.
I
It's
mean, I
just
think
like,
they were charging me what they would normally charge anyone to do it. I think more the problem was is they didn't really know, how to package this stuff, and I wasn't as skilled in terms of knowing how to, to tell them how to package it, to tell them like this is how the art should work, you know.
yeah, I would think the hardest thing to do, like, I know this happens a lot with distributors. They're trying to get out and trying to get their money back too, and not only their money but your money, the
Mhm,
filmmaker's money, and they go ahead and you sit down and you change the cover art and or the title of the movie. Um,
mhm.
how do you? Because to me, I mean, I don't know. It'd be like, you bringing in your baby, and you're like, here, I'm bringing in. I got a movie here called Graveyard Sharks. What do you think? And then next thing you know, you look at it, and it's like, what happened to Graveyard Shark? Now it's Wheezy Shark. Well, I didn't do that.
Sometimes it's feedback from the sales guys. Like we changed Ring Shark or Well Shark to Ring Shark when I presented it to my sales guy for the wide release, and I told him, I says like, it's basically Ring, with a shark. He's like, well, then why didn't you just call it Ring Shark? Change the title. I said to the filmmaker, I said, do you care if we change it to Ring Shark? And he said, yeah, I don't care. And so we did. So ultimately, like, sometimes when we package this stuff for wide release, and I'll see sometimes like on the Reddit boards and stuff where people are making fun of the artwork looking so much like the Godzilla artwork and stuff like that. It's not necessarily my choice to do that. It's like I present the movie to my sales guy, and he'll go like, okay, we can get this in a Walmart, but we need it to look like Godzilla, King of the Monsters artwork, or we need it to look like Godzilla versus Kong artwork. And uh and I could be like, oh no, I got principles. I'm not gonna do that. Or I can go, okay, we're gonna deliver that artwork the way you want it, so it gets in these outlets, and then the filmmaker makes more money and the movie gets exposure. Otherwise, it's never going to be in those stores, and a handful of people, or the SRS fans, are going to see it, and a handful of people in a few stores are going to see it. There's not as many outlets out there, so we're really competing for that shelf space, and it'll
Right.
get on the streamers. But as we mentioned, there's a glut of product on the streamers, so when they're scrolling through, you have to make sure that art makes them stop and go, okay, at least put this in my wish list or my watch list, or even, or hopefully we'll watch it, because it's hard to separate themselves. So it's the art is key. But that's, it's just, the beast of the industry, that this is like the burden. I'm horrible with phrases, remembering them tonight. But it's just something that you got to do. So
A couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. How do
sure.
you how do you how do you find these movies? I mean, I mean, I know that a lot of distributors a lot of filmmakers come to you, but I'm talking about you. Like you mentioned, you're in Reddit. Do you
Mhm.
sit in different groups? I mean, do you surf? How do you keep
Well,
track
I
of
do
what's going
surf
on?
Reddit a bit, but not necessarily the indie groups. I just sort of search the general news. I like
Right.
to anything from political to crypto to financial to, Godzilla news, post or whatever. And it's fun sometimes to come across a post that's from about SRS Cinema, about something we released. But I don't think I've ever found a filmmaker from Reddit. Like, I don't remember ever contacting a filmmaker. I don't know if any filmmakers are necessarily posting on there. There was that whole thing with Golgoga, or however you say it, the Indian that lost Indian kaiju movie, where this guy claimed to have found the print, and then I actually reached out to him, and he said he was going to send me the print, and then when he said he mailed it, he forgot to get the tracking number. So it was obviously it was either looking for attention, or he was doing a very early April Fool's Day joke. But
Yeah.
uh, it's kind of like what I said earlier about the Japanese or the kaiju movies, is that it's a mixture of filmmakers who come to me, filmmakers who's I see their trailer get shared, like I'm on Facebook, I'm scrolling and someone shares, hey, this is a funny trailer, and I'll go look and I'll be like, doesn't look like they have distribution. I'll reach out to them, or it's a reference. I just actually had a meeting with a filmmaker before I hopped on the phone, or hopped on this with you, that he has a bunch of movies that he produced, early 2000s, mid 2000s, and um, they're with a distributor who no longer has rights to him, so he wants to take him back, and he wants to send him over to me, because of another filmmaker that he works with is very happy with the relationship we had. So
Awesome.
that was just a reference. It's like, I did well by this filmmaker, and they were, very happy with how I treated their movies, and they in turn told their, now partner, like, hey, I'm real happy with Ron SRS Cinema, and then he said, oh, well, I got a bunch of movies, and I would like, that are just sitting around and growing stagnant, that I would like to run by him. So that was a reference.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
word of mouth is everything. It
yeah,
really is, especially in today's
very
world.
grassroots.
Every single time someone drops a review, every single time someone mentions you, every single time someone hashtags you, it just all helps you in the long run. And,
Yeah,
as a fan, I really hope that continues.
thank you.
And great success to you and SRS.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
I want to thank you for coming out, Ron, and talking with
Oh,
us.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolute honor. I hope we get to do it again soon. I would love to
Sure.
attend your ear sometime early next year.
Or
To
you could
catch.
have some of the, you're always welcome. Just reach out to me about if you want to talk to any of the filmmakers
I'm
or
going to do that off
actors.
camera. I'm going to do that
I
off
can,
camera. I'm going to ask you to help me get an interview with that one director.
sure. I'll see if I can convince him. I don't know how many interviews he's done lately, but I will encourage him to
It won't be
get
my
on.
interview with him won't be like unlike any he's ever done before. Tell
I'm
him
sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be neat because I really would like to, because I'll be honest with you, when I saw what had happened, I sort of took that personal on his behalf. I really
Well,
did. I felt
that's why the
really
fans like you are great, because you guys do take it personal, and you're very passionate about these movies. So you support them, you show up when we need them, when we put them up for sale, and then you defend them like they're part of your family.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to thank the chat tonight. This has been absolutely outstanding. You guys rocked it really hard
Yeah, I wish I
tonight.
could have seen the chat, but that's great. I'm glad so many people came out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people here to come on in here. Our friend Cheryl just came in. I think she is flying as we speak. She is flying on in Canada, and
Cool.
different snows here, and looks like we might get some deals made, or at least some talks going on in here. I love it. I absolutely love it. Hopefully, everybody will connect with everybody else in the chat. We will be back here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We're going to be interviewing a young actress named Katrina Kusa. Will be here with us tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And she's
cool.
she's only 20 years old, and she is a multi-talented artist. So she will be here with us tomorrow night. On Saturday at 4 o'clock, we'll be interviewing novelist Joe Cornett. He's a film director who does Westerns, but he also wrote a new book. We'll be talking about that. Then next Tuesday, the 23rd, let me see. Yes, the 22nd, we will have Lou Simone. Director Lou Simone will be here with us. Her brand new movie, 9 Windows, dropped, and we'll be talking with Lou about her new film that came out on Gravitas Ventures, who seems to be aiming their way toward more and more horror as of late. More horror, more thrillers for Gravitas Ventures. And she will be here on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. All right. Stay right where you're at, Ron. And to the chat, I'm going to say thank you again for showing up. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Thanks so much. Have a great night,
guys.
everybody.
And girls.
Let's see.